Welcome to Caffeinated Truth Apologetics, where we are learning to defend God's truth one cup at a time. Today's episode is all about learning. And no, it's not because I'm a teacher on summer vacation and I'm just really missing giving homework or doing grading for my students. And no, it has nothing to do with that beginning of the school year email that all you teachers listening know exactly what I'm talking about. Actually, I want to be able to introduce to you some ways that I do some learning and the way I call within the cracks. So for me, it's looking for ways to be able to brew knowledge without another degree. We could call these some of these non-traditional ways of continuing your education and getting knowledge. It's definitely a good option if you're going to be in my shoes where I already have several degrees or I already have some things in education. But it's also not to discourage anyone who's looking into getting maybe a degree in a biblical studies type thing or in apologetics or to get a master's. So this is something that to be able to look at if you're looking for other options. I'm also going to be mentioning a couple ministries today. And it's not because I'm endorsing them or because I'm an affiliate. It's just because these ministries themselves have really blessed me as I've gone through my own learning through the cracks. And also because I want to be able to give you examples of the type of ministries and things that I'm going through. So kind of keep those two disclaimers. This is looking for more non-traditional ways of learning. So let's get started. I want to talk about this concept that I tell other people about, that I need to fit this new thing or this new learning in the cracks of my life. As I've mentioned, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, my kids play sports year round. And so I don't really have a lot of time to sit down and open books and do a ton of studying. I'm going to be able to do things on my own schedule or a little bit more passively throughout my day without the pressure on myself or on others to wait on me to get things done. So we're going to be looking at a couple of those things. So to get started, let's just start how I got started. And that is to listen to podcasts. In fact, this is a great way and a great reason why I decided to start my own podcast because it fits perfectly into that fit in the cracks type of methodology. So with podcasts, I mostly listen to podcasts. I put my headphones in, I grab a load of laundry to fold, I do some dishes, and I'm able to be exposed to a lot of different issues that people are dealing with, learn about a topic that I never understood before. Sometimes I don't even know that it's a controversial thing, and I'm able to get that information, be exposed to it for the first time. I do know, and maybe this is you, that a lot of people do like to watch podcasts. And I do that on occasion as well, but it would have to be something I'm actually sitting down for to be able to get done. I also really appreciate that you can start and stop podcasts. So somebody's calling down the hall for mom, I need to go start dinner. I can go ahead and stop that episode and back up if I need to later on. So it is really the most flexible way for me to get some more learning in. Now, the downside to podcasts is that sometimes it doesn't go quite as in depth. There are definitely some deep dive episodes and some that are a lot longer. But for the most part, I feel like this has been the most beneficial way to introduce me to something that will allow me to go into greater depth later on. It is also something that might be a little bit harder to share. I know that podcasts are extremely popular and a lot of people I know do listen to them, but not everybody does. And so it is something that's a little bit newer to be able to share with someone in a more non-traditional way. But podcasts are great. The last thing that podcasts do is it introduces me to a lot of books. All right. So that's going to be my big thing here. Books are introduced to me through different guests that people have on. They'll talk about the book themselves that they've written and give a little taste of what's to come in the book, either because it's written or because it's been published. Or also a lot of podcasters will go through and say, hey, this was a resource. This is something I read, or they might give a book review themselves. Just on their own. What I like to do is I'll open up that Amazon list if something sounds really interesting and I'll go ahead and put it on there. So maybe I don't plan on necessarily buying the book through Amazon, but it's just a really easy way because Amazon has almost everything to be able to go through and put that on there so I can come back and revisit it later. Now, The greatest thing about books fitting in the cracks is that I'm able to stop and take time to read a little bit every night. So it sounds kind of daunting. I don't always have like hours and hours to read anymore like I did as a kid or in different situations, but I can commit to reading about a chapter a night. And I can eventually get through that huge stack of books on my nightstand. Now, I'm going to get a little bit on a soapbox here because I am an English teacher and a high school English teacher, but I really want to encourage everyone if maybe this is not your MO when it comes to reading, but to read physical books. Now, I do listen to audiobooks on occasion and I have owned a Kindle in my life, but there is just something really special about reading a actual physical book. And it's for a couple different actual educational reasons. First of all, you're going to be able to annotate and write down notes, things that resonate with you, those thoughts that you have in the moment. And that's something you're going to be able to go back and look at in the future, especially if you're going to do that deep dive. Another thing which is really helpful is when it's a physical book, you're going to feel. Do you ever know what I'm talking about here? You feel exactly how thick it is on either side, whether it's your left or right hand, knowing how far you are in that book. And that's going to help you go back and reference that. You're also going to be able to lay out books if you're going to do a deeper study. You could have this book on your desk versus this one, and you're going to be able to see all that information at once. I know you can open multiple tabs. I'm an elder millennial. Maybe I like my paper, but I do still see a lot of benefit with print books. I also love just the fact that it's so easy when you're out having coffee to bring your book and lend it to a friend. That's so much easier and it fits in the cracks of their time to sit down and read that book on their own terms. And so it's again, and they get to see your handwriting. I'm just saying, this is caffeinated truth apologetics at its best. So get into those podcasts, get a little bit introduced to the issues that are out there, fit into your own time. And then also for those deeper dives, get into books. Okay. Now you might say to yourself, all right, I hear you. But I learned best in school when we would sit down and we would learn together. Maybe you were a student that struggled to just kind of like do this studying thing. I admit it can be daunting. We don't always teach a ton of actual study skills as you guys grow or as you grew in school. I don't know if I learned a lot on my own. I think I just figured it out. So maybe you're looking for something where you're going to be getting that direct instruction. And so the next in the cracks way that I would like to talk about this is going to be through ministries. There are so many ministries out there that are training lay people that aren't necessarily in professional ministry, but are super interested in these topics or these issues or doing the real work in the church and for the church, big C, in these different things. I know for myself, when I was doing youth ministry, there was an organization. It's gone. It's called, or I think it was gone. It was bought by Group Publishing, but it was called Youth Specialties. It originated, I believe, in the late 70s, and they put on these amazing conferences called the National Youth Workers Convention. They happened every year. I believe they traded coasts, but it would be a huge weekend conference. And you've heard of these before. You come in, you'd have your group sessions, you'd have your pull-out special sessions on a specific topic. You got to network, you had resources, and it was a really great way to continue that education without stepping back into a classroom. Now, these things still happen for other ministries. So where can you find them? I really recommend that you would just get on good old social media and start finding a few ministries online to be able to talk to them and be able to look and see what they're doing. A couple of them that I know right now off the bat as I get my notes out is going to be the Cross-Examine Ministry through Frank Turek. They have, they call it CIA. It's the Cross-Examine Instructor Academy. Again, I encourage you to get online to look at these. I'll try to put them in the show notes. But it is one weekend. You do need to apply to go. I don't know exactly what's involved with that, but I do know that they have some amazing speakers this year. And it will really give you a chance to be further equipped in that. You can also check out Theology Mom and the Center for Biblical Unity. They also have some new online classes. that you're able to join. Again, look at for that website in the show notes. And really, really, I have to brag on Mama Bear Apologetics. So I just finished their deep dive instructor training course, which again, you do apply. There is a short application, but they go through for this next course that's happening in the fall here. You're going to go through the original Mama Bear Apologetics book, and you're going to take time to go through each of those worldviews and learn their ROAR method, which is, I might talk about that on another episode, but they will equip you. There's a great community that you can be a part of and chat and really get into the trenches with other mama bears. Okay. And they do have an online community called The Den. It's relatively new, but I do know, again, going back to those youth ministry years, that these online communities are such a blessing to be able to talk and bounce ideas off of and to network with other people. So again, you do not need to go back to school and get into a classroom if you just want to learn, but you could take some time to get online or into a course in order to be able to get a little bit more for you on there. Okay. Now, you might take another step back and say, all right, maybe I want some instruction. Maybe I do need something that's going to be flexible on my own time, but I want something a little bit more regular. I want something a little bit more traditional. I want something that mirrors maybe what I've experienced before in a university. Well, I have two more ideas, two more ways to fit this into that cracks in your time in your day. And that's going to be different classes and certificate programs. Now, I do want to kind of frame this for you. Like I mentioned earlier, have a lot of degrees. It's not a brag. I have a lot of student debt. Thank you so much, millennial student debt here. But I do have my AA. I have my BA in youth ministry. I actually have a teaching credential, and I actually have a master's in curriculum and teaching. So I guess you could say when it comes stacked up to already having that biblical degree in place where I did do my 4 years, I went through that, but then also having the experience with some education classes, and I've been teaching for 17 years. So I have a lot there. But as a transfer student, I did go to community college and then transferred to my university. I'm missing a couple things. They didn't require for all of the transfer students to take the same amount of prerequisites. I had to do a little bit of catch up with some of the required prerequisites. So, there's a couple classes that I've really wanted to take, things like Greek and Hebrew, maybe some hermeneutics class. I mean, I never even took an apologetics class. I just took philosophy classes, like I mentioned in our last episode. So I really felt I needed to go through and now fill the cracks of my education with something else. So I did hear through another podcast, Elisa Childers, by the way, she mentioned the seminary that she had been auditing classes through, and that was a Southern Evangelical Seminary. And so I decided to look into that. And it's, again, a fantastic program. There's actually several that are like that. I'm pretty sure you could go into just about any biblically sound university and be able to do the same thing. But there are just a lot of benefits with that. So I know for my own self, the application process was relatively painless. I do know that the classes themselves were far cheaper per unit than it really was. I think it's just a flat fee than it is for you to go through and take, the actual class itself. Now, of course, you don't have to do the homework because nobody's going to grade it, but you're basically paying a fee to be able to sit through the lectures and to view the course material and to just absorb and glean from these amazing professors. For the SES program, it is actually completely online. So far, I've taken Introduction to Apologetics, and I am planning to take another class this fall, which is Christian Apologetic Systems. And since it is recorded from the Zoom presentations, I am actually able to go through. I can watch it live stream and participate in the discussions, but then I also can go back and watch them later on. In fact, that's what I did for my Introduction to Apologetics course. I listened to the lectures later on, and and I'd have my headphones in and I'd run over to my counter and take notes as I kind of heard what was going on. But I had the benefit of listening to an amazing professor and to be able to go through that. Now, if you are someone who would like to have that degree, auditing in class is not going to get you there. You would actually have to take the class for the usual tuition and be able to go through that. Even if you did audit the class, there's no way to go back and to be able to make that a 4 credit class. So it doesn't actually go towards a certificate or a degree, and it doesn't actually go on your transcripts that would go to another university. But again, it's a great way for you to be able to get that knowledge in a more traditional classroom setting on your own time with a little bit more flexibility. Now, let's say you're also in my position and you have, again, a lot of education, or you're not really interested in going back to full-time school. My last little method, non-traditional method to introduce to you are certificates. So a certificate is a great way to add something to a current degree, add a specialty. I believe at SCS, they actually require for you, I believe, to be able to for certain things to add to there, or the classes are required. There's some crossover there. Now, they can be about 15 units. I believe that's about the same as a traditional minor. You do get to have a little bit, you do go through the courses, you do need to do the coursework, but you do receive something that will be put onto a transcript, at least through SCS, that you can tout and put on your resume later on with that. Now, there are some certificate programs that are for no credit, but are a full certificate. One of these programs is going to be through Biola. So they have a program that has the certificate in Christian apologetics. Make sure I get that name right. The benefit for that is, again, it's kind of like the audited class. It's self-paced. You go through the recorded lectures with some really respected apologists and instructors. You would recognize some of the names, and you would go through and then again receive a non-credit certificate. So for someone like me who's able to do a lot of studying on my own, I've had no problem learning things. In fact, I'd read so many youth ministry books before I even started my youth ministry degree. I don't actually think I learned much in terms of the actual how to run a youth group or a youth ministry. I think most of my knowledge came from learning adolescent development or teaching the Bible. So it is possible for you to glean this knowledge through podcasts or listening to books as well. So it really comes to whatever your needs are. Some ministries, if you are planning to go into, maybe you're hoping to get on staff or to do something in a more like an occupational type way, you would really need to look maybe what the individual churches are looking for, what their requirements are, or really what fits your needs. I know for youth ministry, not every church did require that somebody had a degree, although a lot did. So that might be a determination whether you want to go more this non-traditional route where we're brewing without a degree versus going into a more traditional degree program. So, so much information, I know. So let's get into this. What am I doing? I am, like I mentioned, auditing a couple of classes through SES. I've already taken Christian Apologetics. I'm taking Christian Apologetic Systems. I'm looking online to see if there are those Greek and Hebrew classes. I just finished the Mama Bear Apologetics deep dive course, and I am actually going to be looking into the Biola Christian Apologetics certificates. I'm also very interested in that CIA Academy through cross-examined. Again, constantly looking for maybe some conferences and some building with different ministry organizations just to sharpen my craft. And the best part is, if you're just getting into apologetics and getting into this community and listening to other podcasters, you will hear that everyone, I'm on such a first name basis, but all these apologists learn from each other. They go through, they recognize that everybody's story, that maybe God has brought their life through, or through their ministry, or maybe their journey to coming to faith, and they've seen that each person has a unique maybe angle or area of study or expertise, or maybe they saw that and they do work together. So that was a lot of information. And before we finish this podcast, I really want to talk about why this is all so important. In fact, just as important as that, daily cup of coffee. In fact, Proverbs 4:7 says, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and wherever you get it, get insight. So we are to continue to look for that wisdom in our day to day. The verse that most people go through and quote in apologetics is going to be 1 Peter 3:15. So in your hearts, let's honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. So how are we going to be able to do that if we're not constantly looking and getting in the word and being able to really feel confident? I know that when I'm talking to other people, and whether it's my kids or my students or my husband, the less anxious I am, the less jitters I have, the more my tone is going to be sensitive to being able to talk to other people and being able to really to meet them at their needs, to be able to ask those really good questions to get them to start talking, and then also to be able to really speak to whatever situation is that they have or the questions that they answer. So how are we able to do that? Well, we have a responsibility to stay sharp. It's not, again, not just for our own selves, but even as we get into our day. As Proverbs says, iron sharpens iron. And as we continue to learn and to grow, we're going to be able to encourage our friends. We're able to set great examples for our own spouses and to be able to encourage them in their day and with their own children. So getting to know God more deeply and more intimately, just like you do when you meet a new friend, or maybe that special someone for the first time, will cause you to fall more and more in love. And everyone knows that when you are so excited about someone, or you're full of that love for that person, it's so much easier to talk about them to other people. So that is the greatest way that we're able to really have those daily conversations in our everyday life and to encourage each other when it comes to Christ. So don't let your time, like I said, find that time in the cracks of your day or your finances to stop you from becoming better equipped for those day-to-day conversations for the kingdom and falling in love with your Heavenly Father by studying with a cup of coffee in hand will help you and make it easier for you to be able to share with others. So until next time, continue to defend the truth one cup at a time. This is Caffeinated Truth Apologetics, and we'll see you next time.